4.3 WYBC, the rhythm of the city. That was Doc Bant from Black Nerd. I love New Haven. Good morning, New Haven. What's going on? This is Moving Target Radio. Once again, having real talk for real solutions. I am your host, Jay Kemp. And with me, as always, is my guest co-host from.
Don't you ever pause like that
My
again.
bad. Zulema, what's up?
Good morning. How are you, hon?
And you know what? I want to shout out my young man that always comes through. My young man that always comes through faithfully. Justin, why don't you step up in the mic, say what up, man, real quick.
Yo, what's up, everybody? I'm here behind the scenes, but I'm here.
All right, that was enough. No, I want to salute Justin, man. He comes through every morning to help out, and he actually adds the discussion after and sometimes before. So at some point, man, if you ever want to come up here and share your thoughts, feel free, man. We got to hear from the young people. You know what I'm saying?
Someday.
All right. So, so before we begin, usually we have a foodie suggestion, but I wanted to make room real quick because we have some special guests in the building. We got on the back with the shades on, you know what I'm saying? And we got some special artists in the building. CEO of Eternal Life, Eric Morton. What's going on, brother?
Hey, what's going on, Jay? Nice. Thank you for having us.
Just need you speaking to the mic, brother.
You gotta get up there, bro. Good morning, brothers. Thank you for having us, Jay.
No, thank you for coming through. And we have your artist for Eternal Life, Brian J.
Yeah.
What's going on?
How you
So
doing?
tell me, man, like when did Eternal Life come about?
Eternal Life Music Group was officially formed in 2011.
2011.
Yep.
And right now, Brian J, are you the only artist on this right now, on this label?
I'm not the only artist on it, but we're focusing mainly on myself right now.
Okay, all right. And what do you feel like the music industry so far, your experience so far as like what you're experiencing in the industry as an artist?
I mean, things are changing every day in the industry, so it's kind of hard to call it.
Yeah.
But it's just a learning experience, Things are always changing. There's always going to be new sounds coming in, and I'm just glad to be a part of it. I love music, so.
Yeah. And what about you, Eric, as far as a CEO of this label and navigating through the industry? Are any changes that you've been seeing? What's the complications?
It's drastic changes now. Things are nothing like they used to be, where at one point in time, the music industry was primarily based and targeting on talent.
Right.
The gifts of the artist, the look of the artist. Now, it's really hard because everything is digital. Everything is based on social network. So you don't necessarily have to be an awesome talent, as Brian J is. You can be moderate talent or not talented at all, but if you have a huge following on social networks, that's what the record companies and execs are looking for now. But us, we're staying true to the gift of the art that the artists possess.
And any shows coming up? Anything that we could go check out?
Yes, we actually have an artist showcase, which will be popping off in January up in New London.
Okay.
I'll give you the exact date soon, but it'll definitely happen in January.
That's gonna be
Brian
great.
will be the featured artist there. We'll have an artist showcase with, we'll have some execs from Empire, Sony, RCA, and from my company. We'll all be there.
Brian, any artists that you would love to work with right now that are out there doing their thing?
I definitely want to work with Chris Brown, if that's an artist that I can work with.
No doubt.
I like a lot of older artists too, like Tank and Music Soul Child, so.
Okay.
those
Tank and Music Soul Child. Okay.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of Tank.
Would you say you go more towards that lane, the soulful vibe?
Yeah, of course.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
That's what's up. So let's make sure everybody has your contact info to make sure we can check out your music, where to check you out on Instagram. Eric, we can start with you for Eternal Life, and then Brian J. Let's make sure we know where to check you out for Instagram and everywhere else.
Yep. So we can be found at eternallifemusic.com, and that's spelled not with an I, with a Y. eternallifemusic.com. To reach me personally, you can reach me at Eric Morton at eternallifemusic.com.
And Brian J.
Yeah, so on all social media, if you go to Brian J Music, the J is spelled J-A-I. You can follow all my content on my website as well. Because like you were asking about shows,
Yeah.
if you want to find out about shows, you can go to my website, brianjmusic.com. We're always updating stuff on there. Right now I'm doing a series of different covers, so I'm doing a lot of cover songs and dropping videos to them. So if you're on the website, you'll see all that. You'll see shows, you'll see new music, listen to old music, my EP, my self-titled EP that I just dropped not too long ago. There's 7 songs that's on there as well. And yeah, that's the best way to stay in contact with me.
What's your best cover?
My best cover is Love Lies, which is what I just dropped it. It's
Oh,
on-
really?
Yep, Love Lies.
You gonna bless us with something right now? Live,
Talk
early
about
morning.
on the spot.
Oh, come on, man. I mean, that's the industry.
I could.
You could? All right, we waiting.
You should.
Yeah,
Let me,
yeah.
let me get a sip of this first. Let me
Yeah,
get
yeah. He's gonna take a sip of his Dunkin' Donuts water.
Get my man with the morning groggies.
Alright, I'm gonna sing for y'all. Sorry if it's hard to catch my vibe. I need a lover to trust. Tell me you're on my side. Are you down for the ride? It's not easy for someone to catch my eye. But I've been waiting on you for my whole damn life, my whole lifetime. Don't be afraid to tell me if you ain't with it. I see your focus, yeah, you so independent. It's hard for me to open up, I admit it. You've got some things to say and I'm here to listen, so baby, tell me where your love lies. Waste the day and spend the night underneath the sunrise. Show me where your love lies.
Okay.
My nose is a little stuffy right now, so
Okay.
that's what made me nervous. My nose is stuffy.
It is early morning, so I get it. Hey, thank y'all for coming through. Really
Thank you.
appreciate
Pleasure.
y'all. All right, salute. Stick around if you want to. We're gonna move into this discussion. All right, so we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for
brother.
having us.
No problem. All right, so we have probably one of the best, most important discussions, I believe, since we've been on the air. You know, this is probably one of the most important. A really great show for you. We have some really great guests. Great show for you, and we have some really great guests to really talk about this. So, about a week ago, I saw something that I didn't think I'd ever see. And no, it wasn't the post about Tyler Perry finally killing off Medea, which I was shocked and elated about.
Don't you dare.
No, I'm sorry. I was happy about that.
I'm so
But
sad.
no, it was seeing hundreds and then realizing thousands of young black Americans shouting for Trump and praising him for all that he's done. I wanted to know, what am I missing right now? You know, I began to listen and I realized while I don't agree with supporting Trump or anybody in that administration, I don't have an argument that supports the party I choose, which is Democrats. So I walked in the City Hall of West Haven, Connecticut. Shout out to them for such a smooth process for voting. Stepped up to cast my ballot or cast my vote, and realized I don't know what I'm doing. I don't even know what I'm doing. I am voting blindly. I was told just vote row A, and I was disappointed in myself for making a decision without thorough knowledge and understanding. So what's problematic about that is I'm not the only one. There are too many black Americans making their choices because of media propaganda and the unspoken rule that if you are black in America, you choose Democrat. And we know that's not necessarily true. We know the people come before the party. So what do we need to know? And what do people like myself have to understand of politics to really know who they're voting for, so we don't vote blindly? Once again, this is not supporting either party, but it's us being more informed and knowing what we need to demand for our people. Senator Gary Winfield, what's going on, brother?
Good morning. I'm doing all right.
Thank you for joining us. And we also have a community, just a regular citizen, Pierre. What's going on, bro?
Not much. How you doing? Good morning, everybody.
So, Senator, I'm just going to ask you to, and Brian, if you just want to move over a little bit, Senator, have you move over so you're in the shot there for the live. So, let's just go right into this. I know I put a post up on Facebook that got really, really hot, you know, when it comes to this. And Senator, I'll kind of bring this to you first. What do you think about this Blexit movement? For y'all who don't know, there's a movement called Blexit, and it's about black people exiting the Democratic Party into the Republican Party, led by Candace Owens. Kanye West really set it off with his antics, you know. And so, what do you think about this movement that's happening?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know how much of a movement it is. I mean, I think from time to time you see conversation about leaving the Democratic Party because of a belief that the Democratic Party over the course of, depending on who you're talking to, 30 or 40 years hasn't done X, Y, or Z for the black community. Usually it doesn't actually amount to that much. So I don't really have an opinion because I haven't seen what I would consider to be a movement. I've seen things that have gotten more attention now, and I think that owes itself a lot to the fact that Republicans are looking to make inroads in minority communities. I think it owes itself to the fact that social media functions in the way that it does, and I think in Candace Owen they found somebody who does well in that environment, and so I think that's why you're seeing it more than you normally see it.
So Pierre, I know you have your views on this, right? And now, are you aware? I'm sure everybody might be aware, but I just want to make it clear that the Republican Party was founded by black people in history. That's where we came from, the Republican Party. Why do you feel we left that?
So, first of all, I think one of the things that's important to understand is that a party is only, it's not solidified, it's only ideas and the people that have the ideas within them. First of all, I think the next point that I need to make is that racism has to be an underlying conversation, or at least at the beginning of the conversation when we talk about this, because without that we don't understand where our place was in politics. And it's always been racially motivated, and we are basically political capital to be used and shifted for either party.
So you're basically saying that because of that, depending on how they want to play on race, depends on who we're going to be valuable to.
Absolutely. And I think we've gotten away from the Republican Party because at some point the Republican Party, the things that become issues in races always become taxes, what your income is. If you make a certain amount of money, then you shouldn't be a Democrat. If you make a lot of money, you should be a Republican. And I think the color of the party turned people away from that as well. And of course, whenever you have a lot of affluent, rich, white Americans, we're going to recognize that, and we're going to shy away from it. But I think the real problem is that we're not acknowledging that Democrats don't have to work for our votes,
Right.
regardless of what the reason was and what the history is, because the parties have flip-flopped back and forth over time. It really doesn't matter where they were.
So when you say flip-flop, I mean, from what I gather, the Republican Party ideologies were more beneficial for black people as far as what they initially were created upon.
So the Whig Party, that the Republican Party, the Whig Party became the Republican Party was an anti-slavery party. So what happened to the Republican Party was, over time, when the Great Migration happened and blacks left the South, the Republican Party didn't have a way to maintain power in the South. And so the ideology of the party had to shift. So basically the parties actually, as was suggested, flip-flopped, right? And the Republican Party, in order to stay in power, had to shift what its ideology was. And so it moved, it's not that blacks moved away from the Republican Party so much, from my perspective, it's that the Republican Party moved away from blacks because that's how they were able to maintain power.
And what switched? What were the
Demographics. So the demographics shifted first, so that Southern whites became the base of their party. Well, when Southern whites became the base of their party, those things, the anti-slavery wing of the party, evaporated, and the things that stem from that were no longer part of the basis of the party, and so the politics of those in the South, which we know at the time what they were, became the politics of the party.
So when we talk about what we should demand from our party now, because all of us choose Democrat, just because Democrat or Republican is associated with more of a white supremacy, that's what a lot of people look at. Republican Party is associated with
sad.
racism.
When I was younger, I used to vote. I'm not used to vote. I still do. But when I was younger, I would just go on and say Republicans are racist, Democrat.
Well, I think a lot
And
of
that's
people
all
do.
and I didn't know anything else. And sadly, in my age now, I don't know as much as I should. But that's how I started.
So I mean, and I think that's part of it. I'm in the Democratic Party. Obviously, I'm elected, so everybody knows what what political persuasion I am, but I still think that people have a responsibility to themselves, not this kind of amorphous responsibility to society, but to themselves to investigate and find out who the individual candidates are. In my lifetime, there have been Republicans who were quite fine, right? Like,
Right.
It's, like there's no group of people that are all exactly the same, and I think the same holds true for political parties. I think as a community, we owe it to ourselves in the community to ask ourselves the question, yes, they're part of the party I generally vote for, but is that individual good? Because you're not electing the party, you're electing that individual. And that's what you have to ask yourself. The other question you have to ask yourself is, given what I'm trying to achieve, even if that individual doesn't adhere to everything I believe in, is that individual strategically the person I want in place so that I can achieve other things? And those are more nuanced questions than what we generally ask, which is, are you a Democrat or Republican?
Right.
Yeah. And for me personally, I realized that for a long time, I was kind of tricked into being a Democrat.
Oh, same with me.
Right. At some point, I heard, and again, going back to this idea of racism and how it shows up in this conversation. When we watch the news and something happens, like there's a fire burning, we know that they get the most ignorant person they could find to put them on television to make, and how that affects our image. Overall, for the rest of us, when the rest of the world sees us, they think about the people that they see that get interviewed on the news. And so when I look at the news, I realize some of the things that conservatives are saying, especially when you see a black conservative, they say the most outlandish
Oh yeah.
things, and I started to pay attention to, that's that crazy no-tooth lady that they put on the news to interview,
Right.
and have really shaped my opinion and the views of some of the views that I've had about some candidates. But I think it's imperative that we investigate. Number one, we have to have a sense of values. What is our moral compass coming from when we make these decisions in the first place?
Yeah,
We
and I
haven't
think
identified that.
That's an issue because we get very emotional. Just having this conversation, Zulima and I went at it for
This has to be the second time.
for like an hour. You know what I mean? Because people automatically assume that I'm saying, oh, we should, think about voting
Right.
for Republicans. I'm not saying that.
Well,
you know.
And I was
you
like,
should.
get off my
Wait,
phone.
But hold on. As a Democrat, I will say you should think about it. You should consider it. You should weigh the Republican candidate as much as the Democratic candidate.
Right.
As a person who is trying to do certain things, it's advantageous to me to have Democrats in power so that I can move in certain ways. But I think that the community, as an individual who happens to be black, right, I think that the community should be weighing each candidate, whether they be Democrat or Republican, and not writing any of them off.
And that's kind of where, yeah, you're right, and we should be weighing on that. And I think a lot of these black conservatives that I've been researching and listening to, they've done that, and they used to be Democrats. So they
Right.
have this argument that they can pose about why they're choosing what they're choosing.
Right.
We don't have
We
that.
don't do that. And I think that they do that because they have to defend themselves, because we come off like, well, how dare you? How could you? Why would you? So they sit and they figure out why, whereas we are just, well, I'm not going to say we, I am just emotional in the fact that like we were discussing on the phone, I don't like how I feel like we're being treated, so I'm not messing with any of that.
Although, I would suggest that I've listened to many of the arguments, not that they don't have an argument, I would suggest that the argument largely finds itself in that, from their perspective, the other party, meaning the Democratic Party,
Right.
has not done, which to me is not really an argument. Still, if you're going to move to a party, and as I've suggested, you should weigh both parties, but if you're going to move to a party, the movement should not be they have or have not done this. The movement should be what that party you're moving to is doing or intends to do, or whatever that case may be.
So I just want to ask this quick question, and this might, I don't know, compromise your position. You're here as a citizen. You're not even here necessarily as a senator.
And you already know I don't care. So.
Right, exactly. Just want to make that clear. Do you feel the Democrats are working hard enough for our vote, or are they just getting it off the race card?
I feel like getting it because there's a habit to give the vote to Democrats. I also feel that oftentimes we'll say that Democrats aren't working hard enough to get our votes, and we don't understand how votes can be obtained, right? And the power you have in the vote, right? So we'll give the vote but we don't understand the power of the vote. So I was having a conversation at the door with the person who was like, well, I don't vote because nothing changes, right? And I'm like, all right, cool, I hear you, but you therefore have no power. They're like, this power thing. I'm like, let me ask you a question. You're probably concerned if they don't ever come knocking on your door. Absolutely. I said, you know that there's a list that they get the people whose doors they knock on? Like, there's a list. What? I'm like, yeah, if you vote and you vote a certain number of times, you get on the list, which pulls them to your door, and now you're part of the conversation. I'm like, well, I didn't know that. So part of this is about the education of how these things work and the strategy that comes from that knowledge, right? That's important, right? Now, it may not be the end all and be all of everything, but if you don't even know that that's how you pull people to your door, then you're never in that conversation.
Right.
But I think this happens on a micro and macro level, right? When you ask the question, do Democrats work hard enough for a vote? There's no incentive to do so. They're already getting your vote. They don't have to ask you anything. And the dangerous thing about that is that the Republicans don't have to pay us any attention. They don't have to come up with any policies that suit us because they already know they're not getting our vote. And so what so many people are afraid of is the very way that we have some power in the situation. If there are more people voting as Republicans or conservatives, then we have some say over who ended up running for president in the primary, right? And again, going back to the sense of values, how are we making those decisions as to whether or not I should even entertain this particular candidate? And to say that the Democratic Party hasn't done enough for black folks is an understatement. I think that on a national level, if you look at some of the policies, they've actually been detrimental to the black community. And I guess it's almost like that old racism versus North versus South, right? In the South, they'll tell you get out, and up here, they'll smile at you and find a way to push you out.
Right.
And I think that that difference in the type of racism and the way that it shows up is definitely a part of this conversation.
So we have a phone call right now. We have somebody that's calling in, and I believe I know who that is, and I'm having issues being able to answer that call right now, Lon. So you're gonna have to excuse me, but I definitely want to hear more of your comments. So let's see if we can get this. 94.3 WIBC.
No.
Great conversation, great show. I just want to make this comment. I think that, in fact, as a voter, as a citizen, right, and even if you're Democratic, right, I agree that it is extremely important for you to vet both candidates, or all three, all four, depending on who's running, to make sure that you understand and that you're educated about, in fact, what they're standing for, what their campaign is all about, and what you can look towards the future if they win, right? And especially when it comes down, I think that we got to take it a step further than that, right? Because once the election is over, right? One of the big complaints that we have in this country about politics is that because at least both parties that, the biggest parties that we have right now are basically, ruling the country, so to speak, right? Or guiding the country, right? They have to come together, right? And so the reason why they're not coming together is because voters are not exercising their civic duty, meaning that you have to understand different policies that are being voted on and where both parties are coming from. And if you feel that your party is not being open enough to look at the other side and what they're talking about in order for both parties to come together and stop the gridlock and in fact make policies that are going to help your community. And so my my feeling is that it needs to go beyond, like, what party do I belong to? It needs to go beyond, prior to the election. After the election is over, continue to be educated and continue to understand what those policies are all about and what party is bringing what to the table. And are those two parties, in fact, filibustering and, in fact, working together or what? So that's my comment. You guys are doing a great job. I love the conversation.
Thank you, Juan. We appreciate you, brother.
Peace, man.
Peace.
Continue.
So yeah, I agree. We really need to take it a step further. I actually mentioned in a live that, we voted. Great, salute. Now what? Because just voting and taking a screenshot or taking a shot of you
And my
with your sticker.
Yeah, my sticker.
You
I
didn't vote
voted.
for the sticker, all right? And that's not activism. That's advertising. So there's a big difference. Pierre, you mentioned media, right? Now I know there's left-wing media, there's right-wing media. Where, and I guess this is also for you, Senator. Where can we find hard facts, neutral media that is not biased, that's not spinning the numbers to support an agenda? Where can we find that?
I think you gotta go back to the 80s.
I'm
No,
going
I
back to
just
the 80s.
I don't see
You
that
want
kind of
something?
I don't see that kind of journalism anymore. To be honest, right? I don't see a whole lot of just information. Everything's an editorial. I heard somebody else say that the other day. It's like there used to be stories that were informational, and then there was an editorial page. That's where you found your opinion. All the news is opinion now, and I think it's much more liberal than anything, which I always have to watch, because I know when there's always something on television, it's very easy to paint another side in a certain color. So one of the things I notice is I've seen people say things that are absolutely made sense. I'm sure, Senator, you've seen this happen, where a Republican can say something that makes absolute sense, and to watch liberal media try to distort it so that it sounds crazy or that it's unbelievable. And when we can't see through those things and how the divisive nature of those mechanisms, then we end up being polarized and only able to vote for one party, rather than holding senators and our elected officials accountable for what their policies are and how beholden they are to their constituents.
I also think that if you choose a source that you go in knowing already agrees with you, it's probably a biased source, right? So if you go to Fox News or MSNBC, they have a leaning, and they don't hide from the fact that they have that leaning, and people like that form of news because it's also entertaining, right?
Yeah.
If you go to C-SPAN, it's not entertaining, right? Like I
Not
don't
at
want
all.
to.
True.
I don't want to
Very
watch
true.
C-SPAN
Right.
because it's gonna bore me.
Right.
But there's not all that much of a bias there. It's pretty much here it is, right?
Right.
And then people will say, well, there's no way. If you read newspapers, there are newspapers with leanings, but there are newspapers that are generally towards the center, right? But again,
What newspapers would you consider more towards the center?
So while Donald Trump thinks the New York Times is a left-leaning newspaper, it's center left. It's center left, right? So, but this is important. This is important because we, for the most part, stopped consuming news through reading, right? We consume
Yeah.
news
Yeah.
through television, where
Through
in
timelines.
order to get ratings, because that's what it's about, like it's got to be more entertaining. So it becomes a Fox News or an MSNBC, and then we start saying, well, all news is biased. That's just not the fact.
Well, so this is exactly one of those moments that I'm talking about. In no way am I a Trump supporter. I have to start off saying that. But when Trump said fake news, he said, "Yeah, it's fake news."
Yeah.
And people were like, "What is fake news?" And I looked around like black people, like, y'all don't know what fake
Yeah,
news is.
for real.
Right.
Fake news
All
is
of
a
a,
thing.
and all of a sudden, we don't know what fake news
Right,
is
right.
because we're so separate and so separated from this individual, and we have to remove ourselves from as far as he can. That we try to make everything that he says absolutely crazy and insane. And when that happens, then people start becoming dishonest with themselves and what they really feel.
Can I ask you something while you're in the midst of
Absolutely.
that? I never considered it fake. I considered it that station's point of view. Like, you can hear something from them, and they truly believe that. You know what I'm saying? It's almost as if you watch the debates on CNN, or if you watch, you know,
Yeah, but I mean,
I, 1 second, Jay.
Yeah.
I don't think the issue is so much that Trump said it was fake news. I think it's that the way that this plays out is the news can be perfectly fine in Donald Trump's mind until they disagree with him, and then they become fake news, right?
Right.
So the problem is he doesn't, and I don't have to agree with him, but he doesn't have a way of saying, I look at these and these are fake news. It's, you were fine yesterday. As soon as you disagree with me, you're fake news. And so it's hard to take Donald Trump seriously in that respect.
In
right?
anything.
There is fake news, don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is Donald Trump has a big platform, and he uses that platform to say that anyone who disagrees with him, I'm going to use the platform to now put you into the category of
okay,
fake news.
right.
so Professor Don Sawyer, you know, you come in the building.
You know
man.
you're getting on the mic.
You know you're getting on the mic
I
somewhere.
unplugged this
Professor
headphone.
Don Sawyer has joined us, and salute to you for such a great show last night, man. The Emerge production with the formerly incarcerated individuals was incredible. You work a lot with, so like being critical on media, right, and really having a critical eye on that. Would you agree with that as far as with your students and other classes that you've taught?
Yes, sir.
So, what is the best way to have a critical and balanced view when listening to media, when trying to get your information, specifically with being informed on what you're going to vote for, who you're going to vote for? You know, what's the best process for people who have no idea of politics, such as myself, to get balanced information?
I think part of it is, I mean, having panel discussions. I hate to say this, but as a college professor, I'm realizing that a lot of my students don't read, right? And so one of you were talking about how we used to get our news through like reading, and they're not even listening to the news, and so they're not informed at all. And so part of what we do in the classroom is to say, like, you have access to all of these things in your hands, like these things like that. And so for us, if I go to Facebook or something like that, I'm still gonna get news feeds from my partners. But when they go to their social media, they're not getting news feeds of things that's going on. And so I think in the classroom, we have to teach and pressure them to develop the skills of critical thinking. But I think a lot of that is lost in the K-12 education with our over-reliance on standardized testing, that students aren't necessarily taught to be critical thinkers. They're taught to be mindless consumers. And so if you don't have those skills, it becomes difficult for you to understand and be able to make your opinions based on fact. So I have a lot of students who will just like try and cop out and say, well, that's my opinion. I'm like, that's great, you can have your opinion, but if it's not based on fact, it doesn't stand in its classroom. And so it's really setting up students to be in that space where they have the opportunity or to build those skill sets of critical thinking and pointing them into the different avenues and letting them know that all media is biased, right? There's no one right way, but getting them to kind of answer those questions and to become critical consumers of what they're bringing in.
So Gary, we become critical consumers, and thank you for that, Don, because that is important. And I think because they're not necessarily doing through K through 12, we need to take it upon ourselves as adults to be able to do it in our homes, do it in our communities. So we take this information, right? We take this information, we get a balanced view of who's running and what we're looking for. What are the things that specifically here in New Haven, but let's just say Connecticut, what are the policies that we're really not looking at as people who are uninformed, many of us, about who's voting and what policies are on the table, and what are some things that we need to be paying attention to when trying to get this information?
I mean, that's a huge question, because from my perspective, I know this sounds like not what you're asking, but from my perspective, it's everything, right? There are no policy points that we can ignore. They all affect our community. I think one of the things that's problematic, as I suggested, we don't read. We also don't, after someone's elected, we don't follow them. So we were having a conversation before we actually started about how someone engaged with me, and they were like, you all you do this, you do that, you do that. And I said, well, what do you know about me? And they were like, well, I don't know. I know you're elected, right? So like, like
You're a senator.
You know I'm a senator. You know I got elected. You didn't follow. You don't know what I've actually done. You don't know whether I'm good or bad. You have no clue because you haven't put that forward. And the conversation went to people saying they don't have time. Yet some of these people find themselves in social media arguing about this for hours.
Right.
The same time you put into arguing about something you don't have a basis of knowledge on, you can put into developing the basis of knowledge, finding out what is this person doing? Not what's the party doing, what's this person doing? Because you have a party of Democrats, you have a party of Republicans, they're not all the same, right? So what are they doing? And I have people who I talk to all the time who are like, I didn't know that you were the senator. You know, I've known you. I don't even know you're the senator. Well, I represent you. Why are you walking around with people representing you who you might even know who you don't know represent you?
Right.
So we haven't done the foundational stuff. Before we get to policy, we haven't done the foundational stuff.
And the foundational stuff would just be more about just having the habit of following up on who you're voting for.
Listen, I don't mean to cut you off. I don't
Yeah.
think you should walk around and you're in the city of New Haven, you don't know who your alderperson is. I don't think you should be in the state of Connecticut and not know who your representative is. I mean, that's basic. But voting is the easiest thing you can do, right? Like you go, you vote, you're done, right? But it takes a little bit, and I know that.
Well, no, I was just gonna say whether you voted for that candidate or not.
Right,
Right?
no, absolutely.
And
right,
I
right.
think that's an important part, that we have to get outside of our heads, that if that's not who I voted for and that's my party, it doesn't have anything to do with me.
It has everything.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Because guess what, folks? Trump is our president. For all you people that say he's not my president, I say to you the same thing I said to people that said Barack Obama wasn't their president.
Right.
He's sitting in that Oval Office, and he's dictating policy. And in politics, we have it backwards, where we don't put pressure on our elected officials. And I think that's part of the reasons how we go into voting for them in the first place. I don't want to vote for somebody that is going to make all the right decisions. I want to go to somebody who's going to speak the decisions that we've made as a
Right.
collective.
Right.
That's your job. So I don't need you to have 100% accuracy in your decision makings. I need you to be a parrot.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Right.
the other part of that is, like, when you don't pay attention, you don't follow this stuff, and you disconnect. You know, I spend a lot of time with people who are like, it doesn't affect me, right? When you do that, you're never going to see yourself inside, right? You're always an outsider. And so then you start to wonder, well, I don't know why none of these people look like me. Well, if you come from a community of people who've gone, I don't know, it doesn't affect me, they're never going to get in. And we had this conversation a little bit earlier where when I was in activism mode, right, I was kind of like, I don't do the political thing. I'm yelling at politicians. I'm protesting politicians. And somebody checked me and was like, yeah, okay, but if you don't like what they're doing, how are you going to change it always being on the outside? And, you know, I came back like a lot of people, well, you know, people get in, they change it, and they're like, really? Seriously, you think you're going to change it? And I didn't have an answer for that. And that's what forced me to run, because I recognized that I was full of it. Right? And the reality is, are you going to get in, or are you going to endeavor to change things, or are you going to just stand outside and complain? You can do either one, but then you see what you currently see.
And that's the same idea as why we as black people should be getting into the Republican Party. We don't like it, but we have an ability to go in and affect it and change it. What if more black people got into the Republican Party when Jesse Jackson was looking to become a president?
Was he running as a Republican?
When in his Republican his stint as a Republican, I'm not a historian. Don't get me.
This is
jacked
when he
up on
said,
that.
"I am."
Yeah, I am somebody. Yeah, but I mean, in that point, he was. I know he was a black Republican that people still scoffed at. We didn't understand that because we didn't associate ourselves with the party. But if you know a party like I know a party, if we get enough people to crash that party out in East Haven, it's going to become our party, right? And I don't think we have that mentality and understand our value and our strength in doing that, and kind of holding the Republican Party accountable and responsible for our votes.
So what do you think? What do you feel we as a people should be pressuring the Democratic Party to do that you feel you haven't been seeing?
I think part of it is, and one of the difficulties coming from specifically in urban America, people would argue that their life doesn't change no matter who's in office. Right? And so if I'm in a space and I'm constantly in survival mode, literally I don't have time to really look through and see what all of these people are doing, because I don't feel that my life changes. And so that's why you hear people saying that it doesn't matter. Right. And I think one of the things that we associate Democrat with black, Republican with white, but then also the race piece. And I think one of the reasons why people can't understand why a black person would vote Republican is because we see them as attached to a racist ideology. Right? And so if we can't get past that, I don't think you're going to get people shifting in there, because it's almost like you might even agree with some of the Republican principles, but it's almost like I can't say that because I'm going to be shunned.
Yeah.
That's exactly the problem. And
Are there principles that you do agree with that you would want to share before you get
so
before you get attacked?
so they use those topics like race, sex, and they divide us. We all know that they do it, but we still allow them to do it.
When you say they, are you referring to?
I'm talking about media and the
Media,
racist
okay.
infrastructure.
Mhm.
But when it comes to making a decision about a candidate, if I am only thinking about race, and it doesn't allow me to hear and agree, there's a cognitive dissonance that occurs, like you just stated. I understand what that person is saying, I agree with what they're saying, but I can't be seen agreeing with those racists over there. And I think that instead of looking at it that way, we might actually be able to find some commonality that some of us are actually saying the same thing. So when it comes to I've had conversations about welfare reform, right?
Okay.
So some people don't understand, or have never really thought about, because of the individuality of things, how detrimental that's been to the black community and black families. And people know it, and people have seen it, but then when you hear people talk about reform, it seems to be a very negative thing. And I'm not talking about any specific plan that Trump has or anyone has,
Right.
but just the idea in itself is so off-putting to people of color that we don't pay those things attention. We don't check into it. We don't look at how does this policy affect me. And there was another example I have. At this moment, I just
So I know we're always
Running out of time.
and not having enough to really discuss this. But I think I would like to know, and if we don't have it, we should really think about doing this. But something that is a little more entertaining than C-SPAN, to give us some information, basic information that we need before we go and vote. Is there something out there like that? Don, you should
Man,
say
I don't know if you remember. I mean, they usually have it through the presidential election, and it may be even for now, where you can go to a site and you can type in. They ask you different questions on different topics to see what you would vote for, and then at the end of it, it'll be like, okay, you lean Republican based on what this is, and then they'll list like what the platforms are of the candidates. So I think things like that, you can kind of get the quick and dirty on what
Okay.
people are voting for, as opposed to saying, I'm voting against something, but not necessarily knowing what you're voting for.
Right. Yeah.
And some of those sites actually do like a whole kind of like a power map, right? Where it's not just who you line up with, but it has the gradations all the way out to people you completely disagree with. But you can see like, well, they're not right in that first circle, but they're in the second circle. Maybe I'll check them out too. One of the things I want to say though is I get it, like the entertainment's important, but we've got to become politically mature and say, also, I just have to invest myself in like the stuff that's not entertaining,
That's
because
right.
there's a lot of information we miss out on by not doing that.
That's right. That's right. So everybody that has been saying, "Oh, I don't vote," I don't vote.
I can't
Listen,
stand it. It
then
annoys me.
You're part of the problem.
Right,
I get it. I don't trust the system either.
right.
But I'm gonna reserve my right. I'm gonna practice my right, and at the same time, I need to be more informed instead of blindly voting.
And that's the big part, right? Like, you can't just say you're gonna vote. Like, you have to be informed. That's your civic duty, is to make an informed decision, not just to go ahead and pick something to vote for.
So I want to thank all of you for coming through. We're not going to stop this discussion. We're going to keep it going. Probably not a series, but at the same time, as we get closer, we're going to have more platforms like this. So 94.3 WIBC, this is Moving Target. I want to thank everybody for coming through. Make sure you tune in to USEF for Electric Drum. Peace. All right. Just hit live. Go live. It should stop. Stop live. Bang!